Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. Those who are in the foster care system, what are some of your not-so-good experiences? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
My family adopted 8 kids through the foster adoption system. We wound up with a family of 3, a family of 4, and 1 no siblings. Along the way, we had about 200 children come and go through the house. There were all sorts of horrors. We had one girl who was around 17, whose dad was a professor and an alcoholic. He both molested her and broke her jaw with a punch. We had a small boy whose relative had tried to stab him. We had a family of 4 sisters for a long while who turned out to have been SM'd very severely. They had to go to another home as we had other children, and it was no longer safe for those kids. We had a baby for 3 years who had RAD and was unable to form emotional bonds with other humans. All of the children we adopted permanently were born addicted to drugs and alcohol. 2 of the younger ones, twins, also had cerebral palsy and were never supposed to be able to walk or talk. Through the years of occupational therapy, they are both ballerinas now, and arguably talk too much, so yeah, it's been an adventure. I could tell so many more stories. Being painfully aware that the families I was staying with did not take me in for any reason other than money. Abuse and negligence was an everyday occurrence, and I had no idea that abuse wasn't normal. My adoptive dad has an anecdote from when I was around 5 and came to live with him for the first time. I opened the fridge and with wide eyes said in disbelief, "You have food in here?" So yeah, the whole foster care system is pretty flawed and happy I was able to get out. I wasn't in foster care, but my parents fostered a lot of other kids while I was growing up. The one that sticks with me is when I was about 4 or 5. A little boy came to stay with us. He was about 2 years old, and I remember asking my Mom, why does that little boy have casts on both his legs? I thought you can only break one at a time. And she just kind of sobbed and said, because some parents aren't very nice to their little boys. I didn't really understand what any of that meant until years later, when I remembered it for some reason or another. I asked her about it, and apparently one of his parents broke both of his legs and threw him into a wall. I still think about him and wonder how his life turned out. A whole lot that I try not to reminisce, but the short end of the stick is my foster parents clearly had no intention of showing me any kind of love. Becoming their foster child and being passed around the rest of my family and being rejected was really scarring for me. I moved in with them freshman year of high school, and I actually ended up staying with them the whole way through. The only reason I chose to stay is because if I left for another foster house, I wouldn't be able to go to the same school. And while they were few, I made some really good friends I wasn't willing to give up, so I decided to put up with the neglect. In hindsight, I suppose I've become stronger over the experience, but it always scares me thinking of ever talking to my family again or even having a girlfriend because I'm afraid that I'll treat them poorly like my family did me. The only foster home I actually have memories of was amazing. I went to live with my mama, her name, at 10 months old. She was so kind and just had this aura around her that felt like home. I lived with her and her 3 children until midway through kindergarten. One afternoon, when we got off the bus and were going inside to change into play clothing, my social worker was at the kitchen table. He told me to pack everything up. I was so bewildered, but I did as I was told. It was like a light had been shut off in my mama. When I came out with all my things packed, the social worker said that Mama's adoption process had been stalled, and he found me a family to live with. He told me I would be much happier in a white family than with a black family. I was so confused. Mama was all I knew. She told me I would always be family, and she would keep fighting to adopt me. I get in my social worker's car, and he drove me to my paternal grandparents' home. I lived with them the rest of my childhood, but I spent every Sunday at Mama's. My grandparents weren't bad, and my foster home wasn't bad. But being pulled out of a loving home that was all I knew was terrible. It was all because the social worker that had been assigned recently didn't think I belonged in a black family, and he found bio family. Still talk to my mama often, and I'll always be thankful for her and who she is as a person. Her unapologetic take no shit, but always kind attitude is who I strive to be. You couldn't shame her, because she never did anything she'd be ashamed of. She's honestly the best person I've ever known. Seeing her at the table devastated still haunts me some nights when I lay in bed. My parents just recently got divorced and they were fighting really bad. My mom moved us back to Florida from Illinois and had us stay at our aunt's house for a month or two. At the time, there were 4 of us. I was 3 to 4 years old. My younger brother was around 2, and my older sister and brother were no older than 11 or 12. Anyway, my mom went back to Illinois to finalize some things and get some belongings of ours, so we lived with our aunt. Within those first 2 weeks, from what my mom told us after signing temporary power of attorney over to my aunt, she put us in foster care. I was in multiple homes from what I can remember. I was so young, but some memories will never leave. One of the first homes was the worst one. If I didn't eat my food, I stayed the night at the kitchen table. One time I threw up, and I got thrown into a room for a full day and wasn't allowed out. I remember crying under the door saying I was sorry. That same house had like 6 to 7 kids in it. I shared a room with 4 other children. From what I remember though, the children were very nice. The foster parent, were terrible. Not only did they verbally abuse us, they fought each other. The husband and wife would essentially beat the shit out of each other in front of us. It was honestly the scariest shit I saw when I was that young. Then I got moved houses after some time. I can't remember them all, but I do remember temporarily being under the same household as my younger brother. We had a very nice woman and her older son, maybe husband. They were so nice. We called her Mrs. Kim. She bought us so many toys, took us to the park all the time. She was an angel. I remember her face still to this day. Hope she's doing well. Almost failing my classes in high school because 10 teen girls in a 3-bedroom house with 2 staff members and 1 van meant getting home from everybody's drug test appointments and grocery shopping and shit at like 8 at night, and nobody was allowed to be in their rooms until bedtime. So no homework got done until 10 p.m. under my sheets with a flashlight. Only ever got half my work done and started getting into trouble for falling asleep in class. Bullied for being the only girl in the house who didn't drink and get high at every possible opportunity. New staff every month or so because the pay was shit, so never had anyone to talk to. Verbally and emotionally abused by the power-tripping bitch who owned the place and collected checks for every girl who stayed there. Got beat up for reading. Had to watch Grease and Legally Blonde on repeat every night because those were the only 2 movies we had. No privacy, no respect, no compassion. We were simply cattle. I'm 22. Growing up, I lived in a very small county. My high school only had less than 500 kids total. Everyone knew everyone. I got taken into foster care when I was 16 because my mom had smacked me and then called the cops on me while she was high on meth. She was arrested that night. It was a school night. I woke up around midnight to someone yelling my name and pounding on my bedroom door. When I opened the door, there was a social worker and 2 police officers standing in my hallway. They told me to grab my school stuff and some clothes and come with them. I cried and said goodbye to my pug. I was in foster care for a few years when I was younger, and I knew I wasn't coming home again. The social worker took me to the social services building and put me in one of the visit rooms. You know, the rooms with the double-sided mirror and all the toys where they let foster kids visit their biological parents? I sat alone in that room and cried until around 7 in the morning. The social worker took me to a bathroom to change out of my pajamas and into school clothes. Then she took me straight to school. No sleep, no shower. She said she would pick me up after school. I got to school way early and sat and cried and waited for any of my friends to show up. On the first day, I only told 2 or 3 people what had happened. I told a best friend and my older sister, who no longer lived at home. I don't remember a lot of what happened at school that day. I just remember crying a lot, and my teachers and the other students asking me what was wrong. I was too ashamed to tell anyone else. After school, the social worker picked me up and brought me back to social services, where my new foster family was waiting in the parking lot. I recognized one of the teenage girls from school. She was a year younger than me, and though I had never spoken to her, she always seemed like a huge bitch. She was one of the biological daughters. The family also had a biological son, who was a year older than me. A 1-year-old daughter and 3-year-older daughter who no longer lived at home. There were 2 other teenaged foster girls in the home who didn't go to my school. There was also a younger, maybe 3-year-old foster girl with special needs. This is where things get jumbled, or spots are left blank in my memory. I just remember lots of fake smiles from them at first. I remember crying almost every day and being in trouble for it. The mother didn't let the foster kids into our room until it was bedtime. So when I'd cry, I had to do it in the living room in front of everyone. I tried to cry in the bathroom at first, but with 7 people in the house, I couldn't stay in there very long. And if the mother walked by and heard me crying, or her kids heard me and told on me, then she'd come and knock and tell me to come out of the living room. It's very dehumanizing to sit and cry in front of people nearly every day. They'd make jokes or just comments about how I was a moody and mopey person. The mother and daughter had very high school mean girls personalities. When one of the other foster girls was out of the room or away on a home visit, they would talk garbage about her and try to get us other girls to chime in. We couldn't bond or find comfort in each other because they were always driving wedges between us. The biological family called us the foster kids. The daughters also called us slaves jokingly. There was a divide in the house, us and them. We were treated inferior in every way. I don't remember a lot of specifics, and I didn't want to go into examples of how they treated us. My mind has done a good job of erasing a lot of it. And that wasn't my main point of commenting. I haven't gotten to that yet. But I think it's important to get across that these people were just evil. They only did it for the money and spoiled their children while denying us basic needs. The father was verbally sexual toward us. The son got into a toxic relationship with one of the girls. The mother and her daughters were horribly emotionally abusive. We weren't allowed any privacy or alone time. The special needs girl that I mentioned earlier slept in a playpen in the living room downstairs by herself because she cried too much. She spent most of her time in there alone because she was a bad kid. Anyway, I wanted to comment in the first place to share how ashamed I was to be a foster kid. I eventually had to tell my teachers because I couldn't stop crying at school. I kept getting sent outside or to the office. After a few weeks, I'm sure everyone at school knew what had happened. I cannot explain how damaging it was to me personally to see the way people look at you when you're in a situation like that. My teachers, my friends, kids at school that had never liked me, judges, social workers, counselors, my sister, everyone looked at me like I was a crippled dog. I developed a real fear of looking people directly in the eyes because I couldn't handle it. I was afraid for people to feel sorry for me. People started walking on eggshells around me or avoiding me completely because it made them feel bad to know what I was going through, as well as being treated like an annoyance and less than human in the foster home. I felt like a burden to everyone who knew me. I made everyone uncomfortable. I think that's the most damage foster care did to me. It took my humanity away from me. I felt like an outcast from my own life. At home, I was one of the gross foster kids. At school, I was the girl who cries a lot and doesn't have a home or a family. At court, I was the poor girl whose mother is a meth addict. At counseling, I was the girl who had a traumatic childhood and is still suffering. I wasn't allowed to be myself anymore. Everyone took that from me and replaced it with pity and their own discomfort. I apologize for this being so dang long and disorganized. I never told anyone this much about the period of my life. Thank you to anyone who makes it through all of that. We did.
You hear these stories quasi regularly, though I feel like the light over the foster care system is rarely brightened, and it's kind of this unspoken thing that everyone may assume, but it could be even worse than what the people who are able to tell their story about really is. So why do you think that is? Should there be some more wide set reform, and who could do it?
Florida ex-foster care child here, so strap in, boys and girls. I'm not worried about any doxing. This was years ago, and I don't even know if the place still exists since I moved to the other side of the globe. There exists a company in Central Florida known as the Arnett House, which has a large compound in Ocala. Due to the lack of available foster homes and jails for kids, some genius decided it would be a great idea to house criminal children and foster children together because they're all problem kids, right? You got in by either being taken into foster care and placed there, or you broke the law so many times that a Florida judge made you a resident at Arnett for rehabilitation, or both. While I was stuck there, I saw all sorts of shit. Staff members were either great or horrible. Nothing ever in between. Once a fight broke out where one of the criminal girls attacked my foster friend, and the staff just sat back for a couple of minutes to watch before intervening. I ended up jumping in between them and throwing my arms out sort of like a T-pose until staff eventually pulled the criminal girl away. Yeah, I got the nickname Jesus. My long hair at the time probably had something to do with it too. When my younger brother was moved in, I found out he, 16, was flirting and making semi-sexual moves at a mentally handicapped resident girl, 13. I talked to him about it, told him that was not okay, and he told me to mind my business. I alerted the staff, and they explained there was nothing they could do until they both ran off together in the nearby woods, like a different couple had done a few days prior. Oh, and last story for now. I wasn't allowed to learn to drive. I lived there from age 16 to 18, when my high school offered driver's ed courses for free. I was explicitly banned from taking them because the big boss bitch claimed that if I learned to drive, I could theoretically steal their van and drive away with a bunch of other residents. I was a volunteer for our county social services department, simply helping out with officer paperwork as I sat and was at a computer software engineer at the time. One of the social workers approached me one day and told me that there was a boy that they were having difficulty placing because he simply didn't want to be a foster child and wanted to stay with his mother, who didn't want him, and asked the social services department to find him a home. I met the boy, and we seemed to hit it off from the get-go, and he agreed to become my foster son. He was 10 at the time. He was with me till he turned 16, at which time I adopted him with his mother's blessing. I put him through college, and he got a great job, earning quite a bit more than I was. He continued to stay with me till he got married. I became grandpa to his great kids. His kids are adults now with families of their own, making me a great grandpa. So now, in my old age, I briefly moved into a retirement home, but my son insisted that I move in with him. He told me that I took care of him all those years, and now it was his turn to take care of me. So I now live with him, and he's taking very good care of me. My biological mother was autistic, very high functioning, but also suffered from extreme depression. She tried to kill me and her when I was 2. My aunt took me in and wanted to adopt me. She's amazing. CPS in New York City strongly supported her gaining legal custody of me, but my bio mom fought it for 5 years. Despite dozens of specialists, caseworkers, and doctors testifying that my bio mom was a danger to me, the state of New York refused to give my aunt full custody. My bio mom eventually surrendered custody when I was 7, after 5 years of legal battles, because she was pregnant with another child. No, that other child did not turn out okay. The amount of emotional trauma I endured as a child from having to repeatedly testify against my own mother in court still haunts me to this day. But at least I turned out okay. In junior high, grades 6 to 8 in the US, typically between the ages of 11ish and 14ish, typical lowest to typical highest ages, but usually 11 to 13, I dated a girl who was in the foster system. There were 4 foster boys in the house. She was 14 and in 7th grade I was 12. We went on a date for Valentine's Day to the mall and movies to see the movie Batteries Not Included, about the mini flying saucer aliens. She kept putting my hand up her skirt and on her boobs. I had been molested by a babysitter for a year and a half and felt very confused and a bit victimized by it all. She kept trying to pull my pee out, and so forth. After the movie, we ate in the food court, and then she convinced me to sneak into the access hallways and make out. We kissed a lot and groped, but when she took her panties off and put them in my pocket and asked me to have sex with her, I told her I was not ready for that yet. She began crying. I told her I wanted to date her because I liked her and thought she was awesome. We hugged. We went to a mattress store, oddly enough, and sat on a mattress while she told me about how 2 of the boys in her foster home R'd her on several occasions. That in the last 4 foster homes, the fathers had all R'd or M'd her. Most of the boys in foster homes she had been in groped her or R'd her. That 2 mothers had R'd her with the fathers. That she had to shower in front of the men and boys in various foster homes. That she was offered drugs and booze by the dads all the time. That she had been forced to be the girlfriend of the current dad's friend who was 27 until the guy went to jail for drugs and robbery. It was the saddest thing I'd ever heard. We dated for the rest of the year. Then she got sent to live with her mom. Not a good thing. This is in '87, so cell phones, especially for kids, were not a thing. She had my number, but her foster parents went through all her stuff before she left and trashed a lot. I forgot about her panties until I got home, asked her how she wanted me to give them back to her. She told me to keep them. Had them for most of puberty. Another girlfriend found them and threw them out a few years later. As for if we did more naughty stuff after that date, some, but that is not really a part of the story. I did tell my dad what she told me, and he went to the foster house. She told me that after that, they left her alone. No touching and nothing else. She considered my dad a hero. I do not know what all he did or said. He still will not talk about it, but when he came home, he saddled his horse and rode alone through the woods on their ranch for a few hours, not coming back until dark. My mom had to bandage his hands. My dad's the most awesome man I know. He is my stepdad, but he had always been a real dad, kind of my hero as well. Sorry about making this about me too. My point was how horrible the foster system was for her. Aging out. You have no one to turn to, no one to tell you how to be an adult. I remember being 18 and crying my eyes out because I thought I could be arrested for not being able to pay my electric bill or just bills in general. Predatory people in general. You trust abusive, toxic people very easily. Where do you go for holidays? I have an awesome best friend whose mom begs me to come for holidays, but I usually choose to work because it just feels weird. Every time you accomplish something, no one is there to cheer you on. Now in my 30s, I made a handful of awesome friends that are a huge help, but it took me a while to learn how to have a healthy relationship. Another thing is that a lot of us are introverts due to being ostracized at school and having to live in a group home or overcrowded foster homes where we were just a paycheck to a shitty foster parent. You just want to be quiet and you are really okay being alone. A lot of us leave nomadic lifestyles because we've become so used to the constant shuffling. I suppose I'll edit if I think of something else.